Welcome to the Strategic Oracle, the transmission space where timing meets soul and wealth begins with the rhythm. Let's begin. This is the third episode in the Reversal Arc series. So I see what strategy can't solve. Now, that's not an easy thing for me to say because I was born a strategist. There are very few percentage of people who naturally have strategy in their inner knowing and allow it to come out in the world. And that's just what I do and who I am. And I know this has been accepted in the world because I was in the boardroom in my early 20s. And I wasn't in the boardroom to take notes as an admin or to get people coffee. I was in the boardroom and I was participating in negotiations. Now, I wasn't an active participant at first. I obviously was observing and I was learning, but yet I was the one handling details. I was the one analyzing. I was one thing taking to the next level. And that continued throughout my career. So this wasn't just a glimmer, she gets invited to the boardroom and now she's going to be escorted out because, her role has changed. This has held true throughout different companies, different positions, different way I was working. And what I've known and come to know is that my presence in the boardroom was always different than most others. Now, I can't say they were different than everyone because that's unknowable to me. But when I look back on it and I realize I was observing who owned the room and whose meeting it was and who had the true power, even though it might be silent in the corner, and what was happening in the room versus what would happen outside the room. Now, you think about it, that happens, right? Sometimes the deal is made inside the room. Sometimes the deal was made before you even walked in the room. And sometimes the deal gets presented and yet purposely doesn't get to resolution until you're outside the room again, right? So to me, this was a fascinating thing. I mean, I adored it. It was scary a little bit probably at first. I didn't know I was doing this observation. I didn't realize I could hit that rhythm and hit that tempo and realize in a nanosecond or less that I could just read the room. And so I'm talking about strategy, and I'm remembering I'm talking about strategy because I would go in as a strategist. So at first I went in and I was watching deals being made, right? So I remember, the first time I had to follow up on a meeting in the boardroom, which I was just very much a participant because I was maybe all of 23. And so I ended up having to talk to the number 2 guy at Pepsi, right? And here I am hoping my voice didn't squeak, hoping I wasn't swinging my legs underneath my desk. And that was a moment that I knew hit and hit in a very positive way, because then a handful of months later, I was at a movie premiere down in New York City, and I was at the Windows of the World having dinner with, having a full-on conversation with the number 2 guy at Pepsi, right? And here I am, I'm 23 years old. And so I'm sharing this so that you recognize that it's no joke when I say, I can see what strategy doesn't do because I've owned strategy. I am strategy. I have been, wearing strategy throughout the years of, starting very, very young and realizing, wow, I can really read the room. And then because I could, I kept being invited back into the rooms. And my next iteration was in the financial department, and I was doing financial forecasting. I was also numerate because I could understand strategy and forecasting and trends and the economics behind it. I could put forecasts together for like $250 million companies, and I'd be in within $10,000 inexplicably. And then I'm in the room there because I'm watching the negotiations between all the different departments because we're doing forecasting and budgeting and everybody wants all the money. And so I was really, what a training ground that was, right? And then further on, now I'm an Oracle and I'm walking into the rooms and I'm a paid consultant and I'm a very highly paid consultant. So when I walk in the rooms, I'm now making the deals. I'm the one. Oracle flew me around the country to fix things, right? So I was the one recognizing the problems. I was the one, being the troubleshooter, if you would, to get to resolution. And that's when I really observed, wait a minute, it could happen before you get in the room. It's that pre-meeting, anybody who's been in corporate for a while recognizes the pre-meeting for the pre-meeting for the pre-meeting, right? Yeah. So it happens in the room or it happens after. Sometimes it's a series of all the things. That really prepared me to be able to say this statement that I can see what strategy doesn't solve. Because you can have the best strategy. You can have the company scaling and the teams building, and you have the exit strategy all in place. You have the models that get fixed. You have the millions of dollars that are saved or made. But in all my observations, recognizing what happens before the strategy, what happens underneath the strategy, what happens around the strategy, what happens in the space in between. And so when I was doing it in a very practical way, observing, I was observing who owns the meeting, who wins the day, how do they win, who do they talk to, how do they talk to them? That's all observation. So there was a very great experience based on this. But yet, once I owned my oracle nature, which people now are coming back to me and saying, gee, is it a coincidence you worked at Oracle and really, found your footing at Oracle and now you're the strategic Oracle? Why no, not coincidence. I knew it then. I knew it when I took the job. I said to myself, this is going to be so much more. And I knew it wasn't about the company. I knew it was about me. And at the time, I would have rationalized it as you were going from a finance position, sitting in an office to a consulting position. All of a sudden you're client front facing. That was a big enough switch. And so that was a huge shift. But again, I knew it was more than that. And I couldn't even fathom that I would be identifying myself as a strategic oracle, saying that I can see things at the moment of origin and I help you reverse them, right? And so here I am telling the story of, wow, strategy is so important. But the arc of the shift of this for me, seems glacial now when you look back on it, because I told you the front of that, my being in boardrooms, and then spoke a little bit about me being an oracle. But the moment that I was at Oracle and I'm starting to have the freedom of expression, the freedom of the one putting the deals together, the freedom of having a big team that I'm managing. And so I was able to go to many different client sites. And one of my consultants, he was my right-hand guy at the time, he said to me, I can see you walk in the room. He says, and you're on the phone, you're doing the things, you've got, people walking in the hall, asking you questions, doing all that. And then you walk in the room, he said, and you can just see, and his words, not mine, you can see the business model just kind of coming into your body. And you can see the moment that it's hit. And I would say remembered. And then all of a sudden now I'm running a meeting. And I've never forgotten that. I can tell you what he was wearing. I can tell you what I was wearing. I can tell you which client side I was on. I can tell you what the season was, what the lighting was in the room, because it was that much of a pivotal moment of ownership. So that's when I started realizing, oh, I'm downloading business models because I was responsible. My team was responsible for putting the strategic dashboard together for the C-suite. That's why I was in the C-suite rooms. That's why I was talking about what their true metrics were, how we're going to be able to form them, what, all like basically the oversight of the whole business. Again, strategy, that's where I lived. And so as I was downloading those business models, I got really good at recognizing what was working, what wasn't working. So then when I then pivoted to my traditional business strategy firm, of course I was downloading business models for people. When I've transitioned into this iteration of my business, right? And I'm front facing with the Oracle piece in the true sense of the word. I still download the business models. But this is where strategy doesn't meet everything. Because if your strategy is built on falseness, on misalignment, on distortion, or an altered state, then the strategy is untrue. And so that's where I can see now when my clients come to me and they've done I've implemented the perfect plans, but it's still not working, or I've hit all the revenue goals, but something's missing inside. Or, I've watched, people in the online space and all of a sudden they reach out to me and they say, you know what, I don't know what we're going to do together, but I need to work with you. and I can see what's missing. I can see that underpinning is based on, straw or pillars that aren't strong. Or, I can't tell you how many times I say to people, we are going to fortify your foundation. We are going to put more pillars in place. I'm going to take your business model. I'm going to turn it on its side, and we're going to lay it out, and we're going to look at the right way that it serves you. And they look at me and they lean in. And they start nodding like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for. And this isn't strategy. This is something that is restoring your rhythm. It's helping redefine that and fix that distortion underneath. And it's because it's the system beneath the strategy. And so that's why I can't really say I'm a coach or I'm a consultant. I kind of cringe at those words. And believe me, that's not easy to do because every PR team, every marketing team, of course, that's where they want to categorize me. On LinkedIn, I can't say that I am the restorer of systems that have collapsed or I am the oracle of XYZ. You can't say that. There's no category for that, right? So it feels really good from a delivery perspective, but it doesn't feel good from a marketing one, right? But I have to own this because when I own this, I allow you to fully own you. And again, if I did the strategy and I did the consulting and whatever, we'd still get results and we'd get really good results. Clients scaling past 7 figures, even reclaiming marriages and firing their boards and rewriting generational patterns, but it goes even deeper than that. It's more potent than transformation. Now, thinking back to a client that I had a handful of years ago, success by every measure. I mean, honestly, 9-figure person, reaching out to me, and I'm kind of looking at her and the way she came to me, she said, I want to tap into my intuition. And that happens to me a lot. And I don't know how to do it. Fair. Yes, I can say yes to that. And yet there's going to be so much more transformation underneath that because there's a reason that she's not tapping into her intuition. Now, for her mind was really, running amok. She was very impatient. She was a ruling warrior. She still is a ruling warrior. And so everything had to be delivered, like a minute and a half or less, which I can hang with that all day, every day. And yet it wasn't her mind that was the issue. It was the symptom because what was underneath that stillness, right? Like in that stillness was something that she didn't want to name. Now, I'm not going to say it was like this big, huge thing. She had been going through just a family transition. Her mom had recently passed away. Her dad was, really sick. I mean, and you can look at that and you could say, of course, she's just at that time of her life, right? And that was true. But it was even more than that. Because what was going to be left, right? Was it going to be her in her wholeness, or was it going to be her and her fracturedness? So if we hadn't worked together, what would have been left was her and her fracturedness. But because we were working together, I could go to that origin point. I could restore her soul wholeness with her, and I could get her to breathe and to take the time and to sit in the space and not be afraid of the space because she wasn't afraid of herself anymore. So I'm not going to go into her full story because that's not really the point. The point is that she needed to be able to capture herself and hold herself in wholeness. Oh, and then she could then tap into her intuition and she could open her heart and she could listen to her knowing. And then with that, she stopped following other people's models. She stopped paying, an exorbitant amount for coaching. She could then partner with people in a different way because that was her root. She's very much a connector with people. So she was connecting with them before, but there was always a power struggle. And so this way, that power struggle could be let go and they could be then forming true partnerships because that was the key for her. And honestly, we laid the strategy that she had on before with about 3 or 4 tweaks, one of them major, and then a few of them minor. And then it was that now the pillars were in place. We had to then, refortify some things and refortify some foundation, and off to the races she was. So this is where if I'm coaching or if I'm consulting or I'm holding true to the practical nature of strategy, I am doing my clients and the world a disservice because I can tap into what your signal is. And when you're sending out that original signal, you're not following and susceptible to other people's methods, but you're also not being oppressed by cultural norms or societal expectations. And you're able to free yourself from familial conditioning. And so all of a sudden, you're you in your purity, or you in your origin space, and you're like, oh, here's my full potential. This is what I'm meant for. I'm not meant for the pressures of this or the effort of that. I am meant to be in ease and in the flow in this way. And so those words can be kind of rote unless you look beyond the meaning here, right? So when you're thinking about, not just seeking someone's advice, you're seeking that recognition of yourself and that wholeness of yourself. And this is what my signature codex does. It doesn't fix or push, but it reads. And it restores and it corrects distortions. And so I'm literally relaying the architecture of you. So another client came to me and she had a story about, I've had the $1 million company. I was really successful, but the partner in my business ended up taking my, it was algorithms. And I don't mean to say, it was her individual intellectual property of algorithms because she was partnering. That person took them. Another example for her was going into the corporate realm. So we had to go back a little bit more in history. And of course, you can imagine she had those people that were, oh, my boss did this, or I missed that promotion, or I wasn't seen. And so we went back even further. And it was in school. I had a learning disability. And so there was just this pattern. And this pattern, I don't want to say just the pattern, but the pattern was the symptom. The pattern wasn't the origin point. And so she was on this journey and, she was also wanting to develop more of her intuition, trust. So she wasn't trusting her inner knowing. She was very much in tune. She was very empathic, but imagine how sensitive she was. So we couldn't even get to the stirring of what she needed from a here's the point and here's where it started. We needed to muffle her a little bit. So I remember, honestly, we were in a meditation together and I was like, you need to go into a snow globe. And so we put her into this little, it sounds crazy, right? Put her into the snow globe. And I was like, okay, now there's a muffling here. So now we can quiet all the noise that you're susceptible to because you're too sensitive. Your antennas are literally reading everything else. And you learn to do this because it was a defensive posture for you because you wanted to protect yourself when you were a child because of your learning disability. Okay, that was only like 1/10 of the equation. The equation then came to a point where she had absolute mistrust. And of course, you know where I'm going with this. It was of herself. So she was having these mirrors reflecting back to her of all this mistrust coming at her. So it looked like this person stole this person took my presentation or my promotion or my idea. Of course. Because if she's mistrusting herself, she doesn't have the ability to hold on to it. So therefore, it is being actually, put out into the world because it was such a great idea. It needed to be. So once we got to that point, and of course, we needed to unwind it for her. So she had a much more even tempoed, slower unwinding because of the fragility of her sensitivity and her empathic connections. So we didn't want to do anything to mitigate that. We wanted to protect that and hold that in its sovereignty while we were then allowing this unwinding and this beautiful unspooling. So of course, you know where I'm going now. She had the ability to get rid of the mistrust of others and of organizational structures and giving herself permission to develop more IP for herself. So she's almost come 360 because she's back in the wholeness of what she loved to do and is delivering things from an algorithmic perspective. So it's laying on that architecture. But when I first met her and I told her that she was the originator of architecture and et cetera, she was looking at me like, I want to believe you, but I don't know that I can. And so it was our work together to make her own herself in that way. This is very powerful because this not only shifts what someone is doing in business from a success perspective, but it shifts who they are and who they believe themselves to be. So what is the word for that? It's not strategy. It's not consulting. It's not coaching. What is the word for that? I don't know, honestly. And so I'm grappling with English language here to talk about the depth of who you are meant to be in the world and to ride this transformative wave that's happening for everyone. And we can see the collapsing everywhere. So it's like putting that scaffolding, as you're building your bridge, as you're getting to the next level without deteriorating any part of you that is a strength, but allowing that release to happen that is absolutely meant to let go. So I'm coming up with words like signal and resonance and field and framework and pattern, and looking at the first part of that is there's a misfire or a break or a collapse. And then we go to that point of it and we capture the essence of what's true and we bring that forth while allowing the letting go of any distortion or any misfire or any, point of reversal that is distorted for you. And then we're letting you reclaim yourself to be fully sovereign in the world of your life and your business. And then based on that original signal, now creating the strategy and the system for you to be able to build the life and the business that you are meant to live. What is the word for that? I don't have one. All I know that it is 100% true, and in the full ownership of that, as long as I am wearing it, as long as I am conveying the vibration and the frequency of it, as long as I'm saying yes to being visible and showing up in the right rooms and having the conversations that are desperate to be had, then I know that it's truth. And I know that I'm in the right place, saying the right things, and connecting to the right people and drawing them in. Because what I know for sure, it isn't more effort, it isn't more strategy, it isn't more doing, and it isn't more, technical system. It is a restoration and a remembrance and a rhythm and a tempo, and then creating architecture and design of you and your original blueprint out of that. That's everything. This is why I'm shifting. Not what I'm doing. I'm owning what I'm doing. I'm shifting how I'm talking about it. Because this is too potent and too important to do anything else. So once you hit that point where you recognize who you truly are and you build from that, and you remember to the depths of your soul with precision and alignment what you are meant to be in this world. That's when you have that true radiance of who you are, and hitting that initial point and allowing the reversal to then lead to that unwinding. So if you're here listening, it's because a part of you knows it might be a whisper, it might be an inkling, it might be a nudge, or it might have become a shout, but you are here and you are in the right place. Because this podcast is not meant to be a teacher or even a guide. It's meant to be a return to you. So welcome back, and welcome back to you, and welcome to your true architecture. You've been listening to the Strategic Oracle, where success isn't scaled from speed, but from soul. If this stirred something real, follow it. Apply for activation, enter the vault, or pause right here. Integration is leadership too. Because the truth is, you were never meant to chase the timing. You are meant to become it.